Far from Earth, in the quiet corners of space, there was a small space station called Station A9. It was old, peaceful, and rarely visited. Floating near a beautiful blue nebula, the station looked like a lonely star in the dark sky. Station A9 had only one full-time human. A quiet man named Ray. Ray lived alone. He took care of the machines, checked the sensors, and kept everything working. He did not speak much. Some people said he had chosen this life because he liked silence. Others said he was running from something. But no one really knew the truth. Every night, Ray played soft music from Earth on his old radio. The songs were slow, gentle, and full of feelings. He never sang along, but sometimes he closed his eyes and sat still, listening as if the music was more than sound. As if it was his only friend. One ordinary morning, something changed. A small ship arrived at Station A9. It was smooth and silver, glowing like a pearl. The ship belonged to the Viren, a graceful alien species known for their beauty and wisdom. They looked almost human but had brighter skin and glowing eyes. The passenger was a Viren woman named Tila. She had come to study human behavior and the design of old stations. Her mission was short, just a few weeks. Her people rarely worked with humans, so this was new for her. When Tila stepped onto the station, she expected someone to greet her, but there was no warm welcome. Only a short message blinked on the PHY screen. Dock complete. Welcome to Station A9. Quarters assigned. Follow the blue lights. She followed the lights through quiet halls. Everything was clean but simple. She passed humming machines, blinking panels, and storage crates. Then she saw him, Ray. He was working on a small control board. His hair was messy, his clothes plain. He looked up for just 1 second. He gave a small nod, then returned to his work. Not a single word. Tala blinked. That was it. She was used to polite greetings, formal words. But Ray gave her none. Later she explored the station. It was easy to understand, quiet, neat, and peaceful. The only sound came from the engines and a soft hum from the air system. But when night came, something new happened. As Tala lay in her room, she heard music. Faint, slow, and warm. She got up and followed the sound. It came from a small room with a large window-facing space. Inside, Ray sat alone, a cup of tea beside him. The radio played an old Earth song, something about stars and dreams. He didn't see her. She stood at the door, listening. The music touched something inside her. It felt like a voice, even though no one was speaking. It made her feel peaceful. The next day, Tila tried again. She met Ray in the control room. Good morning, she said gently. Ray looked at her. He nodded. Tila waited for more, but he said nothing. Do you need help with anything? She asked. Ray thought for a second. No, he replied softly, then went back to work. Tila felt confused. He was not rude, not cold, just quiet. Like he lived in his own world. She watched him fix a small light panel. His hands moved with care. His eyes were focused. He didn't rush, didn't complain. He just worked. Later, she returned to her room. On the small table near her door, she found something. A cup of warm herbal tea. No note, no sound. She looked around. The hallway was empty. She picked up the cup and took a sip. It was perfect, warm, smooth, relaxing. That night, the music played again. This time, she sat closer to the radio room. Not inside, just near enough to hear. Ray saw her. He didn't say anything, but he didn't close the door either. It became a routine. Each day, they barely spoke. Ray nodded. Tila said a few words. He listened but answered simply. Sometimes not at all. But every evening, a cup of tea appeared near her door. And the music played. Sometimes, it was a soft piano song. Sometimes, it was a guitar tune. But always, it was slow, kind, and full of feeling. Tila began to understand something strange, even without words. Ray was speaking, not through voice, but through actions. Through the tea, through the music, through the quiet space he shared with her. He was letting her into his silent world, and somehow, she liked it. She started leaving small things too. A flower from the hydro garden on his table, a fixed button on his jacket, a fresh data chip with her favorite violin song. He never said thank you. But one night, the radio played a new song, her people's music, played slowly on a human instrument. She smiled, sitting near the door. Ray didn't. Turned to look, but he knew she was there, and that was enough. The days passed slowly on Station 9, like quiet waves in space. Tel had never stayed in such a silent place before. Back on her home planet, life was filled with soft voices, graceful movements, and shared feelings. Here, everything was still, like time itself had paused. But somehow, it didn't feel lonely. Each day, Ray walked the same paths. He checked machines, cleaned filters, adjusted wires, and wrote short reports. He never wasted time. He worked with care and moved with calm. Tala tried again to speak to him. "I can help," she said one morning as she stood beside the broken water panel. Ray paused. He looked at her, then pointed to a tool and handed it to her. No words. Just trust. Together, they worked on the panel. No one spoke, but the silence between them didn't feel heavy. It was light, soft, like a quiet song. As they worked, Tila watched Ray's hands. They were strong but gentle, moving with confidence. He didn't rush. He didn't complain. He just fixed things. After the repair was done, Ray gave a small nod and walked away. That evening, like always, she found the cup of herbal tea near her door. It was warm. No note. No message. But it felt more than just kindness. She smiled and sat beside the window, sipping the tea while looking at the stars. Then came the music. The radio played a soft melody, slow and peaceful. Tila leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. Even though Ray never said much, she could feel him through the music. She wondered if he played the songs just for her. The next day, Tila decided to do something for him. She took a small flower from the hydroponic garden, a tiny blue bloom with a soft scent, and placed it near Ray's workbench. She left it there without a word. Later, when she passed the area again, the flower was gone. The table was clean. But that night, the music changed. The song had no words, only soft notes and a warm rhythm. Something about it felt like a quiet smile. Tila listened from the hallway, hugging her arms. Ray sat inside the radio room, staring out the window. The stars reflected on the glass, surrounding him like glowing lights. She thought, he never looks lonely, just quiet. The next few days followed a rhythm. In the morning, Ray worked. In the evening, tea appeared. At night, music played. Tila also began working on her research. She collected data from the station, observed Ray's routines, and wrote small notes about human behavior. But more and more, she found herself writing about him, not just as a study subject, but as a person. She wrote, "He does not speak much, but he listens. He moves with care. He understands peace. Ray speaks with silence." One evening, when she passed the control room, she saw Ray struggling with a data cable. "May I?" she asked. Ray stepped back without a word, letting her try. Tila knelt and fixed the connection. When she stood up, she saw him looking at her, not for long, but long enough for her to notice. That small look said something. Something quiet, but full. He gave her a soft nod, then left. The next day, there were 2 cups of tea outside her door. Tila laughed. A quiet, happy sound. That night, she sat a little closer to the radio room. She still didn't go inside, but she sat near the doorway, where she could see a part of Ray's shoulder and the edge of his chair. He knew she was there. She knew he knew, and still no one spoke. But inside that silence was something new, something soft, like two hearts gently listening to each other. One morning, Tila found a small surprise. On the corner of her desk was a folded cloth, carefully stitched. It was a cover for her tablet, handmade, plain, but neat. She smiled and held it close. Ray had made it. She didn't need to ask that later. She passed by him near the hallway. She paused, held up the tablet cover, and simply said, "Thank you." Ray looked at her for a long moment. Then he gave the smallest smile, just a little lift at the corner of his lips, and walked on. That was enough. One day, Tila walked into the garden room and saw Ray standing still, looking at a plant. It had grown too large, and one of its branches had broken. He touched it gently, then picked it up and placed it in a soft basket. Tila stepped beside him. "You care for everything here," she said quietly. Ray didn't answer, but his eyes looked soft. "I think this place is not just a station," she said. "It's your home." He nodded. Then he surprised her. He spoke just one sentence. "I stay because silence is peaceful." Tila's heart jumped. His voice was deep and calm, like the music he played. She smiled. "I understand." And she did. That night, the music was different again. It was still soft but had a gentle rhythm, like footsteps in stardust, like voices that didn't need to speak. Tila sat closer to the door, almost inside. Ray didn't stop her. She sat with her knees to her chest, listening. She thought, he never said he liked me. He never said anything at all. But the tea, the music, the small gifts, they spoke louder than words. And somehow every night, she felt something growing between them. Quiet connection, a silent understanding, maybe even the beginning of something more. Days turned into weeks on Station 9, and slowly, the silence between Ray and Tila changed. It was no longer empty. It was full of small actions, warm tea, quiet music, and soft glances. Even without many words, a bond was growing between them. Quiet and strong, but space is never fully calm. One morning, the station's main screen began flashing. A cosmic storm was heading their way. It wasn't large, but enough to shake the systems and cause problems if they weren't ready. Ray stood still, looking at the data. Then, without speaking, he walked to the storage room and started preparing. Tila followed him. "Can I help?" she asked. He looked at her, then handed her a checklist. They worked together all day, checking power cells, securing loose parts, making sure backup lights and filters were working. No one panicked. Not even Tila. Because even in danger, Ray stayed calm, like a steady star in the middle of space. While fixing a panel high on the wall, Tila lost her balance. She slipped, her foot caught the edge, and she gasped. Before she could fall, Ray's hand caught hers. His grip was strong and sure. He pulled her gently back to safety. They stood close for a second. Very close. She could hear his breathing. He could feel her heartbeat. Neither of them moved. Ray looked into her eyes for a moment. It was deep, silent, and full of something she couldn't name. Then he stepped back. Tila said nothing. But in that moment, she felt more than words could ever say. Later, she sat alone in the viewing room, watching the stars. Ray entered quietly. He placed a folded blanket on the chair beside her and left. She touched the blanket. It was soft and warm. She didn't call out to him. She didn't need to. That night, the radio played no music. Just silence. A soft, deep silence that held all the emotions they couldn't say. The storm hit the next evening. The station shook gently. At first, then stronger. Ray and Tila moved quickly, checking systems and stabilizers. Lights blinked. Walls creaked. A few sensors went dark for a while, but Ray fixed them with steady hands. Tila stayed close, helping where she could. She didn't feel fear. She felt safe because Ray was always one step ahead, quiet, fast, focused. When the shaking finally stopped, they both stood in the engine room, tired and silent. Tila looked at him. "You kept everything safe," she said. Ray didn't answer, but he gave her a small nod. His face was calm, but his eyes were soft. The next day, after the storm had passed, the station was calm again. Tila checked her messages. A new one had arrived from her team. They were asking about her. Returned. Her mission was almost over. She sat quietly for a long time, holding the tablet in her hands. She didn't know how to feel. Later, she walked through the hallway and passed Ree's door. It was slightly open. She peeked inside. The room was simple: a bed, a table, a small light. On the wall was a hand-drawn map of stars. And on the table, a notebook. She didn't mean to read it, but the top page was open, and the words were clear. It said, "I don't know how to say it, but when she walks through the station, it feels less empty. I don't talk much, but I listen. I notice. I don't need to say I care. I just hope maybe she feels it." Tila's hands shook a little. She stepped back and left the room quietly. That night, she sat outside the radio room like always. Ray was there, as usual, but this time, the music was different. It was a soft violin melody, one that Tila remembered from childhood, a lullaby from her planet, played slowly on a human instrument. She placed her hand on the floor, feeling the soft hum of the sound. She didn't speak. She didn't move. She just listened. And for the first time in a long while, her eyes filled with quiet tears, not from sadness, but from something beautiful. The next morning, Ray was working near the air vents. Tela walked up and handed him a small packet. Inside was a music chip, a gift from her home, with peaceful songs. He looked at it for a second, then looked at her. "Thank you," he said. One of the few words he ever gave. She nodded. And smiled. That evening, when Tila returned to her room, she found something new, a small folded paper left by her door. She opened it. Inside was a simple line: "If you go, I hope you find peace, but if you stay, the station will feel more alive." She held the note to her heart. The music began again. And for the first time, she walked into the radio room. Ray looked up. She sat beside him. Still no words, but now they didn't need any. After the storm, Station 9 returned to its quiet rhythm. Soft humming filled the halls, lights blinked slowly, and silence wrapped everything like a blanket. But now, the silence was different. Tila and Ray shared a peaceful understanding. They still didn't speak much, but they were no longer strangers. They sat together in the radio room some nights. Sometimes they shared tea. Sometimes they just watched the stars. No words. No pressure. Just comfort. One morning while Ray was working in the garden room, Tila went to look for a missing report. She entered the communication room, a place Ray often used to store old data files and send logs to Earth. The room was simple: screens, drawers, a desk, and a few memory chips. She looked through the drawers, searching for her report. Then, her eyes fell on a small display screen left on. A message was open. Tila knew she shouldn't read it, but something about the screen pulled her attention. It looked like the message wasn't sent. It was only a draft. She stepped closer and read the words on the screen. She doesn't say much either, but she listens. She leaves small gifts, a flower, a song, a little light in the silence. If she leaves soon, I'll go back to the quiet. I'll be fine. But if she stays longer, maybe this place will feel like a home again. I don't know how to say it out loud, but I think she brings something I didn't know I needed. Tila stood very still. Her heart beat faster. The message wasn't signed, but she didn't need to guess. It was Ree's words. He had written them for himself, for no one else, and yet now she had read them. She stepped back from the screen, careful not to touch anything. Then she quietly left the room. All day she stayed silent. She worked, she ate, she walked the station, but her mind stayed with the message. She didn't know if she should tell him but the words stayed in her heart. Maybe this place will feel like a home again. She whispered the line to herself in the quiet garden, watching small lights float from the vines. It was the first time she truly realized she didn't want to leave. That night, she went to the radio room earlier than usual. Ray was already there. The music had just begun. A soft song with slow guitar notes. She sat beside him without asking. He didn't look surprised. He just pressed a small button to make the music louder. They sat together in silence. Tyler looked at his hands. They were folded, calm. Strong hands, but full of care. She remembered when those hands caught her during the storm. She looked at the stars outside. Then she turned to Ray. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "You never said you liked me." Ray looked at her slowly. He didn't speak. Tila smiled gently. "It's okay, I just wanted you to know. I feel it anyway." Still, he said nothing. But after a pause, he did something else. He reached for her hand, carefully. Slowly, he placed her hand over his chest, where his heart was. His heartbeat was soft, steady, and warm. He looked into her eyes, and in that look, Tila understood everything. He didn't need to say the words. She felt them. They sat like that for a while, her hand on his heart, the music playing softly. No words. No big actions. Just presence. The next morning, Tila received a message from her command center. They wanted to know if she was ready to return. She stared at the screen. Part of her wanted to reply right away, to say no, to say she had found something special here, but she didn't answer yet. She needed more time. She walked around the station slowly, touching the walls, the railings, the plants. Everything here had Ree's quiet care. And now, it felt like her care too. When she returned to her room that night, she found a small handmade pendant on her table. It was simple. A tiny stone wrapped in metal wire, attached to a soft black thread. She picked it up and turned it in her hand. It wasn't perfect. The wire was slightly crooked, but it was real. It was made by Ray. And it felt like a small piece of his heart. She tied it around her neck. The next day, she passed Ray in the hallway. He paused when he saw the pendant. She said nothing. She just smiled and touched the stone, and Ray gave the smallest, warmest nod. It was enough. That night, they didn't sit in the radio room. Instead, they sat in the observation bay, watching a rare group of stars pass by. Ray handed her a blanket. Just like before, she shared a pack of fruit slices she had saved from her supplies. They didn't talk, but when the stars passed in bright lines, Tila leaned her head on his shoulder. He didn't move. He stayed there, still and calm. Together, they watched the stars, and inside Tila knew. He never said he loved me, but I felt it every night, in his silence, in the music. The quiet peace on Station 9 was like a dream. Each day passed slowly and gently. Ray and Tila did their work, shared tea, and sometimes sat together in silence, watching stars or listening to soft music. Their bond had grown strong without needing many words. But in the universe, peace never lasts forever. One early morning, the warning lights on the main screen began to blink. A strong cosmic storm was coming. Tila walked into the control room and found Ray already there, standing with his arms crossed, staring at the screen. She stood beside him. "Is it bad?" she asked. Ray gave a short nod. "It's larger than the last one." Tila looked at the data. The storm would hit in less than 8 hours. Ray began moving quickly, checking power lines, running tests on the shields, and sending out a safety log to nearby stations. Tila didn't ask for permission. She followed him and started helping. They worked side by side. Just like before, Ray silent and focused, Tila calm and ready. In the storage room, they checked the backup batteries. In the engineering section, they tested the auto-stabilizers. In the kitchen, Tila filled emergency water packs. In the garden room, Ray tied down the tall plants. As they moved, the soft humming of the station began to change. The lights flickered slightly. The air vents blew faster. Outside, the space around the station started to glow with strange colors: deep purple, bright blue, and flashing white. The storm was close. By evening, the first wave hit. The station shook gently. Not much, but enough to make things rattle. Tela grabbed the wall rail for balance. Ray moved quickly, typing commands into the main panel. "Shield level at 70%, he said quietly. Tela checked the power supply. Holding steady. Another wave hit, stronger. A loud boom echoed through the walls. The lights flickered again. A panel near the hallway sparked and dimmed. "Emergency lights on," Ray said, flipping a switch. Soft yellow lights replaced the white ones. They weren't bright, but they were warm, like candlelight in space. Suddenly, an alert rang out. "Stabilizer error, section 3. Ray and Tela looked at each other. "I'll go," Ray said, grabbing a toolkit. "I'm coming too," Tela replied without hesitation. They moved through the narrow hallway. The station shook again, and Tela nearly lost her balance. Ray caught her arm and held her steady. "Careful," he said. His voice was low, but it carried warmth. She nodded. "I'm okay." Together, they reached Section 3, the area near the outer shield control. One stabilizer was shaking hard, its lights blinking red. Ray opened the panel and began working. Sparks flew, and the metal groaned. Tela held the light steady and handed him tools without needing to ask. She had learned his way now, his silent rhythm, his calm mind. Even during the storm, he moved like water, no panic, no fear. A sudden jolt shook the station again. Tela's foot slipped on the floor panel. Before she could fall, Ray reached out and caught her. Again, their eyes met. His hand gripped hers tightly, and for a brief moment, the storm outside faded. It was just the two of them, in a quiet bubble, held together by trust and care. Ray gently pulled her up and gave her a quick nod, then went back to work. The moment passed, but the feeling stayed. After nearly 2 hours, the stabilizer was fixed. The lights turned green again. Ray wiped his hands on his sleeve. "Back to the control room," he said softly. They walked back together. The storm was still roaring outside, but the station was holding strong, because they were working as a team. 2 people, different worlds, one heart between them. In the control room, they sat down to rest. Ray handed her a water pack. Tela took it and smiled. "Thank you." He nodded. The screen still showed waves of the storm passing by. Ray leaned back in his chair. He looked tired, but peaceful. "You've done this before?" Tela asked. Ray nodded again. "Many storms, but never with someone else?" Ray looked at her. His eyes said it all. "No," he said. She didn't ask more. They sat in quiet, watching the last wave pass. After a while, the screen turned green again. The storm was gone. The stars outside returned, shining brighter now, like they had survived the night too. Ray stood up. "Time to check everything." "I'll go with you," Tela replied. They spent the next hour checking every system. Nothing was broken. Nothing serious was lost. When they returned to their rooms, Tela found something near her door. A folded paper. She picked it up and opened it. One line was written inside. "Thank you for not leaving." Her heart filled with warmth. She placed the note on her table and smiled. That night, the music returned. It was a new melody, slow, deep, and full of quiet emotion. Tela didn't sit outside this time. She walked straight into the radio room and sat beside Ray. They didn't talk. They didn't need to. The music spoke for them, and the silence between them was the loudest thing in the universe. After the storm, Station 9 was quiet again, more peaceful than ever. The stars outside blinked gently. The machines hummed softly. Inside, Ray and Tela walked through the halls together, not as strangers anymore, but as something closer. Something unspoken. They still said little, but now every small action felt warmer. Ray would hand her tools without her asking. Tila would place a fresh cup of tea on his desk without a word. At night, the music continued, sometimes slow and sad, sometimes calm and dreamy. Tila's heart had grown used to this place. She had come for research. But now she wasn't sure why she wanted to stay. One afternoon, a new message arrived from Tila's home planet. It was from her command center. Mission report received. You are approved for return. Transport shuttle. Arrives in 3 days. Tila stared at the message. The words were clear. The decision was hers, but her thoughts were not. She closed the screen and sat by the window. The stars looked the same, but something inside her felt different. She touched the pendant around her neck, the small stone Ray had made. She whispered, 3 days. Later, she found Ray in the radio room, checking the signal strength. She stood in the doorway for a moment, watching him. He looked peaceful, like always, steady hands, quiet eyes. I got a message, she said finally. Ray looked up. They said, my shuttle will arrive soon. I can go back. He paused for a second. Then, slowly, he nodded. No questions. No emotions on his face, but she saw something in his eyes, a small flicker, like a light dimming. She waited for him to say something. Anything, but he didn't. For the rest of the day, they worked as usual. They checked the hydro garden, reset the shield settings, and cleaned the engine filters. Everything was normal, but everything felt different. Tila kept glancing at Ray, hoping he would speak. But Ray stayed quiet. That night, there was no tea outside her door. She waited by the window. No music played. The silence felt heavier than before. The next morning, she woke up early. She walked to the communication room to send her final mission. Log. But as she passed the hallway near Ree's room, she saw something. His door was open. She stepped closer and saw him sitting at his small desk, staring at a notebook. He didn't notice her at first. Then he turned. They looked at each other. She smiled gently. He looked down. I'm sorry, he said quietly. It was rare for him to speak first. For what? She asked. For being quiet. For not knowing what to say. Tila stepped into the room. You don't have to say anything, she said. I already feel it. Ray looked up. There was a softness in his eyes now. I never wanted to stop you, he said. I thought maybe you'd leave one day. And I told myself I'd be okay with that. Tila sat down on the edge of his bed. And now? She asked. Ray was silent for a long time. Then finally he said, I don't know if this place will feel the same when you're gone. Later that day, they sat together in the observation room. A planet shined below, small and green, with soft clouds and a calm surface. It was a place Ray sometimes looked at when he was alone. He had never visited it. Just watched it from above. Do you ever want to go down there? Tila asked. Ray shook his head. I've always liked the view from here. Maybe some things are better from far away, Tila said. Ray turned to her. But some things are better when they're close. For the first time, he reached out and gently took her hand. Not by accident. Not just to help, but simply to hold it. Tila didn't move. She just let him hold it, feeling the warmth in his fingers. The silence between them was no longer empty. It was full, a feeling of truth, of everything they never said. That evening, Tila prepared her small bag. Not much, just her tablet, her uniform, and a few personal items. She looked around her room. Everything was neat, quiet, but it didn't feel like just a station room anymore. It felt like something more. She walked to Ree's door. He was sitting at his desk, writing in his notebook again. She stood there and said, You never said you loved me. Ray looked up, surprised. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Tila stepped forward and gently placed her hand over his heart, like he had done once. You never had to, she whispered. He placed his hand over hers. The moment was soft and still. No music, no wind. Just hearts speaking without sound. The next morning, the shuttle arrived. A small silver craft, waiting patiently in the docking bay. Tila stood near the exit, holding her bag. Ray stood beside her. They didn't talk, but when it was time, she turned to him. "You gave me something here I didn't expect," she said. "Thank you." Ray nodded. She smiled, then turned and walked toward the shuttle. Before she stepped inside, she paused. Then, without turning around, she said softly, "I'll send you something one day." And then she was gone. The shuttle rose slowly, leaving Station A9 behind. Ray stood by the window, watching it disappear into the stars. The station was quiet again, but it wasn't the same kind of quiet it held memories now, soft ones, warm ones. That night, Ray sat in the radio room. He didn't play a song. He just sat still, holding the stone pendant she had left behind. And in the silence, he smiled. The shuttle was gone. Far away now, carrying Tayla back to her home planet. Ray stood alone on Station A9, watching the stars swirl in the endless black sky. The station felt quieter, but not empty. He held the small stone pendant in his hand. The one Tala had left behind. It was simple, not perfect, but full of meaning. Ray sat in the radio room, the place where music had always spoken for him. Tonight, there was no music. But in the silence, he remembered everything. He remembered the first night she arrived. How she looked around with curious eyes. How she did not speak much, just watched and listened. He remembered the cups of tea he placed quietly by her door. The small gifts they exchanged without words. He remembered the moments they saved each other during the storm. The times he caught her when she slipped, and the time she finally placed her hand over his heart. He never said "I love you." Not once. But every night, through every small gesture, every silent look, he had shown it. Far away, on her shuttle, Tila looked out the window at the shrinking Station A9. Her heart was heavy. She missed the quiet place. She missed Ree's calm presence. She pulled the stone pendant from around her neck and held it gently. It reminded her of him. She knew they had not said the words, but she felt something deeper than speech. Something that could not be captured by simple language. She whispered softly to herself, "I never heard him say he loved me, but I felt it every night." Days passed on Station A9. Ray continued his work, but something inside him had changed. He no longer felt empty. He carried a soft warmth inside, a gentle light that had come with Tila. Each night, he played a new song on the radio, a mix of earth melodies and violin lullabies. Songs that reminded him of the quiet love they shared. He looked forward to the days ahead, not because he knew what would happen, but because he now understood what it meant to care. Several weeks later, a new message arrived for Ray. It was from Tela. She had sent a small data chip, filled with songs, pictures, and a simple note. "I'm still learning what words to use, but I want you to know, in every silent moment we shared, I felt your love." Ray smiled as he played the songs. Soft music filled the station. The stars outside shone brighter than ever. Sometimes, love does not need words. Sometimes it is felt in quiet moments, in the way someone listens, in the small gifts they give, in the comfort they bring without speaking. Ray and Tala had found something rare and true, a connection that did not need to be spoken aloud. And every night, in the silent space between stars, that love lived on.